NHL Trade Deadline week has brought some welcome additions to the Edmonton Oilers, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the panel presented by Sportsnet. I'm Paige Martin, joined by, of course, two of Edmonton's finest, and Jack Michaels and Bob Stauffer. And guys, I want to ask you about the additions that Stan Bowman and his team have worked to bring over, all from the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, earlier in the week with Connor Murphy, and then more recently, Jason Dickinson and Colton Dach. What do you like about these additions and how they can help impact the Edmonton Oilers?
Well, the biggest thing I like is the fact that Edmonton proved itself malleable, because coming into this season, I would have surmised that at the trade deadline, the Oilers would be looking to add a $5 or $6 million player up front. But that right now would not have addressed the team's needs, because when you consider that the Oilers are number one in the league in goals for over the last 11 games and have just a 5-6 record, I think that tells you all you need to know. They're also number one in the league in goals against over the last 11 games. So they've addressed what was the actual need, and that is shoring up the goals against. So they get out and get, first of all, Connor Murphy. Of the names that were out there, I like Murphy the best. Number one, he's a right-handed shot. Number two, he was a vital component of the league's best penalty kill. And number three, he plays with a certain degree of edge that I think some of the other names swirling around don't play with. So again, what Edmonton needed. And then Jason Dickinson. I mean, Bob and I remember when he was playing for Lindy Ruff in Dallas, it was like he was told before the game, if Connor McDavid so much as lurches toward the ice, I want you to be lurching toward the ice with him. He's a defensive specialist, yes, but he's also proven to be, over the course of the year, not just a designated stopper, a guy who, again, enables you to be a little bit more flexible with your matchups, and was part of, again, an 85% penalty kill, which last time I checked is nearly 9% better than what Edmonton's looking at right now. So this was a trade deadline that addressed the weaknesses as opposed to augmenting the strengths of the existing roster.
Well, the Oilers are the second-ranked offense in the NHL, the second highest scoring team in the league. They got the best power play in the league. I concur with Jock. Initially, at the start of the year, I thought we were probably in a perfect world looking at a top six, maybe a middle six forward. It's either a second line or a second or third line forward with some skill. They also added Jack Roslovic early in the year, and he's been pretty good at $1.5 million cap hit. And it's interesting how this is all unraveled. I think back to our media availability with Stan Bowman on Monday before the Murphy trade came down, and I led to believe that that deal was not consummated yet at that time. I believe Chicago had multiple suitors and just put it out there. We want a second rounder. Give us a second rounder. You can have Murphy and we'll retain. And the Oilers had to step up because that was a positional need. And I am with Jack on this. They needed a right. To me, the handedness is more important on defense than it's on forward. And they needed a right shot guy. And frankly, a right shot guy who knows who he is. There's no second, everybody wants to be an offensive guy. I get that. The Oilers have some guys that can get the puck up the ice. Right now, they have arguably the best all-around defenseman in the league, with how much, since December the 1st, how much Evan Bouchard's game has grown here. But I think Murphy's a perfect fit. The Oilers' penalty killing they've moved to how Chicago kills. The Oilers kill penalties differently than they did the last few years. And Murphy and Dickinson do a real good job in the top-ranked penalty kill. So the Oilers just took basically 2/4 of Chicago's penalty top unit out of the penalty kill in the two trades. So, and with Dickinson, he knows what he is. It's a third-line center. Mm-hmm. Stan Bowman talked today about the fact that the Oilers are going to be comfortable with him on the ice regardless of who he's up against. Colton Dach, Stan knows Colton Dach. They take a swing on him. He's big. He is physical. He had a ton of hits. And what does everybody do in the playoffs? Everybody's got to hit. Everybody's got to block shots. Everybody's got to hit. Colton Dach's going to be an aggressive player for Edmonton, and I think he's got more offense than maybe people realize. So, and I liked how Stan explained the assets required. Mm-hmm. If you move Mangiapane, who, by the way, was a consummate pro here, if you move Mangiapane, that's probably going to cost you a second. If you wanted to get Dickinson with retain, my guess is it was going to be like a second and a fifth. And then if you're looking at, because Chicago was going to eat on that, and they were going to have multiple suitors on Dickinson, and then for Dach, that's a former second rounder. So a conditional number one as opposed to maybe 3 number twos. I totally understand that. And when you look at the totality of the two trades, back to what Stan talked about on Monday. We need to be better defensively, and I think they've taken a step in that direction by helping the coach have better personnel.
So do you guys think, with the state of where this team is, of course we always talk about leadership, the veteran team that this is, and that there's a bunch of different leaders on this team, and the fact that you bring over 3 guys, especially 2 guys who served as leaders on their previous team, how do you see that serving in this dressing room?
That remains to be seen. I don't know the personalities inside of out of Dickinson and Murphy. I mean, one of the things that, Edmonton, I think at times needs is a little juice in their locker room, a little energy, a little bit of a different vibe to the room. And that's one of the strengths I thought, past Oiler players like Ryan McLeod and Corey Perry brought into the room, just a different vibe. We don't know that. We don't know where Dickinson and Murphy are gonna fit the bill as far as that dressing room is concerned. What we do know is that typically when pressed, Edmonton has responded, at least in this era. They haven't always played their best when they had lots of runway, but when they have little runway, they seem to summon the requisite energy, finding a way. I mean, Tuesday night's a perfect example. Edmonton had no business winning that game. And again, Ottawa helped by trying to nurse home a lead. I mean, if I'm the other 31 teams in the NHL, if I went to school for 10 minutes, the 10 minutes would be spent on, this is not how you play Edmonton when you're on top. But give the Oilers credit. They do manage to find a way to push their way into games that they absolutely have to win. And I don't think much has changed because Vegas answered the bell last night and they came up with wins. So what I think you get with Murphy and Dickinson are 2 players that are hungry for playoff of any kind. I mean, Murphy hasn't seen it since the bubble here, and let's face it, that wasn't really a playoff vibe. He hasn't played a playoff game in front of fans ever, and he's 13 years in the league and 800 games plus. And Jason Dickinson, again, more of the same. He's been playing higher in the lineup for Chicago for years and entrusted with being the pro to set the table for a younger group to come in. Now he comes in with a team that's ready to win right now. So while I don't know how the personalities will mesh, I think I'm careful to be mindful of the fact that this has to be a twosome that arrives with some desperation in their game. This is a chance to win, and we haven't won for years.
Yeah, and I look at it like this. The Oilers had a drafted and developed leadership core of Nugent Hopkins, if we go by chronological order, Nurse, McDavid, and Draisaitl. Those 4 guys. And now Bouchard sort of emerged as a top-flight player. I think we can safely say that Zach Hyman and Matthias Ekholm were awesome additions, one via free agency, one via trade.
Who've quickly also been part of the core.
Part of the core. And I think there's an opportunity, by all the reports we're getting out of Chicago, there's no question about the character of either Murphy or Dickinson. They'll be a really good fit. And you talked a bit about Ryan McLeod. Colton Dach is a different type of player, but he will have a little bit of that rambunctious energy that I think that Ryan McLeod brought. And I frankly think Edmonton missed it a bit at times just because he was kind of a unique personality. And I'm going to bet you that Stan Bowman is going to tell Colton, you be Colton. You be who you are. I know you're coming in a room
as a rookie
with 2 of the greatest players and an emerging third player that's a star in Bouchard and some really good other veteran players. But there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of that juice. So yeah. I think it'll be like Stan knows the players. I think it'll be fairly seamless. And there's certainly, from a positional need perspective, guys that we're required to get.
So there's 20 games left in the season. Connor McDavid said the other day it's going to be a race to the playoffs. What do you think about where this team is at right now and what you expect to see coming down the stretch here?
Well, I expect to see desperation every night, but not just from Edmonton. I mean, again, Vegas got up off the deck last night. I think if that game gets away from the Golden Knights, they might be in a situation where all of a sudden the whispers about what's going on in their room and on their bench grow louder. I think you've got the new challengers in Anaheim and San Jose will all of a sudden put itself back in the picture with that win over Edmonton. It's funny, San Jose has had 2 turning points in its season, and they both come within the last month, where they blew a 3-0 lead against Edmonton, looked like they wouldn't recover, and then they finally did recover 5 games later against Edmonton. And now that win has seemingly propelled them. So it's going to be interesting for me. You've got the old war horses, Vegas and Edmonton, trying to hold off the new challengers, Anaheim and San Jose, and I'm not sold on Seattle. Seattle is somewhere in that mushy middle. But bottom line is, it's an exacting race in the sense that there won't be any resting guys down the stretch, but it's also an interesting one because competitive edges will be honed. And if you'll recall last year's playoffs, Edmonton, to be honest with you, was in a feeling out process in that first round series against LA. And if it was the old days in the 80s, when that was a best-of-5 series, Edmonton probably doesn't escape. Edmonton had to work itself into the postseason. There won't be any working itself into the postseason, because if they do that, they might miss the postseason.
One of the things that has to happen for Edmonton is they've got to get more consistency in goal. I mean, we can look to team defense. Stan talked about that in the press conference on Monday. They simply have to get more saves with the combination of Tristan Jarry and Connor Ingram, and I think and those guys would both tell you that. And then they've also, with Darnell Nurse and Jake Wallman, both players know they got more game to give. Mm-hmm. And so I think Connor Murphy will end up playing with one of those guys, maybe Wallman to start. But clearly the Oilers have got to reduce the goals against. Goaltenders got to make more saves. Teams got to play better defense. A couple of defensemen got to elevate their play, and then the forwards got to contribute to maybe playing a little less risky hockey at certain times. They score enough. They got to improve their defense. The manager has done his part. Yep. He went out and got a second pairing right shot T. Got a legit third line center that both guys know their roles. A little bit of energy with probably a fourth line guy to start. Now it's on the coach and the players to deliver here in the final 20 games.
And Stan Bowman said, as long as there's not something drastic that happens, we're pretty well done, but they will be doing their due diligence. And guys, thank you so much for doing your due diligence here on the panel, presented by Sportsnet. I think it's safe to say, with 20 games left in the season, we are in for a ride, Oil Country. We are in for it.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't want any more references to the Pacific Division. Let's just address it for what it is right now. It's the Norris. And if you don't know what that is, do Bob and I a favor and Google it.
There you go. Google it, Oil Country.